All right. I told you if you have any questions about body language, just email them to me and I'd answer them. And you email them to me and I'm going to answer them. Now, if you have a question about body language, just email it to me at bodylanguagequestions@gmail and I'll get right on it. Okay, let's get the first one. Hi, Scott. Just wondering if people, when they lie, touch their face or look to the left. We've talked about that several times on here. And I'll tell you, no, it means absolutely nothing. Now, there's nothing to the down, looking down to the left. There's nothing there. So what might be happening is when you ask someone a question, it'd be odd if they keep looking at you to answer it. It's just weird. It just looks weird. If you ask me what 4,000 times 8 plus 6 minus 2 divided by 3 is, and I went, let me see, 4,000 plus, and I kept looking at you, that'd be weird. So people will look around. And sometimes people look up here, sometimes people look down there, they look over there. Who knows? So no, there's nothing to that. And I say that because there are no scientific or any kind of studies whatsoever that show that's true, other than someone's experience. You know, in my experience, when I ask a question, this happens. In my experience, when I ask a question, this happens. I don't even talk about any of that, except for when you ask someone a question and people think that they're lying because they break eye contact. Again, it's odd if you don't break eye contact, if you keep looking at someone and answering. The person who's lying to you most likely is going to keep looking at you because their brain wants to make sure you believe them. And if that person, decides you don't believe them, they're going to start adding qualifiers to that to make their answer more believable. Okay? So no, there's nothing to looking down to the left. There are no scientific studies, not one, that shows that. So keep that in mind. And touching the face, that could be an adapter. And people adapt for many different reasons. It's mostly stress, but it doesn't mean that they're lying to you. There are no absolutes. Don't forget that. There's not one body language cue that tells you someone's telling the truth or they're being deceptive. So don't pay attention to any of that. Look at these cues you're seeing. Look for them in clusters. If somebody were to look away and start doing this, touch their face, and then start doing this, we're just seeing their stress level go up. It could be because they're not sure about the answer and they want to make sure they give you the best answer possible. It doesn't necessarily mean they're lying to you. I showed you 3 or 4 right there. Number one, I looked down to the left, or I looked away. I'm going to say down to the left because there's nothing to that. I started touching my face. I scooted back some. My shoulder went up just for a little bit. And that's a shoulder shrug. Shoulder shrugs should last about a second and a half. Those real quick ones, those just suggest, they indicate if that person isn't sure about that answer. They don't have all the confidence they should have with that answer. And that's okay. So when you're looking for someone being deceptive and you see things like that happen, you want to ask more questions and see if you keep seeing a bunch of body language cues, clusters, that suggests they're not being honest with you. Because again, there are no absolutes in this. There's not one single move or anything or tell that lets you know somebody's lying to you. Not one. Don't let anybody tell you different. All right, now let's take a look at a video from Julia. She has a question.
Oh, hi, lovely Scott. I asked an artist friend of mine some years ago, what would he be doing if he weren't an artist? And he said he'd be a serial killer. Astonishing, I thought, but actually it makes sense, doesn't it? Controlling one's objects. I wonder how many artists are serial killers underneath. I wonder. Anyway, would love to have your thoughts and wisdom on this. Love your programs and all of it. Okay, lots of love. Bye.
All right. First off, you are adorable. You are adorable. Thank you for that. Now, I see what you're saying and why you would have that question. The only artist that I'm aware of that was a serial killer that killed a lot of people is Hitler, because he's pretty famous for that. But I see what you're saying because it's controlling. If you're an artist, you want to control what you're making or creating. And so maybe you've got a thing where you want to control people or whatever. So psychopathy comes with all kinds of personality types. You can be a fairly nice person and be a psychopath and not know it. But I don't think for the most part, because you're an artist, it would mean that you're a serial killer. Maybe that person was joking with you, kidding around, or maybe they're into true crime and that kind of thing. But I wouldn't worry about that person if I were you. I know it sounds kind of weird, but number one, they wouldn't say it. Think about it. You wouldn't say, I think I want to go out and be a serial killer. Nobody would say that. So don't you worry about that. And You didn't look worried about it. I think you just wanted to know. But yeah, that doesn't. It could be, but I'm not aware of any. I mean, you have people like John Wayne Gacy who had clown paintings, and then there are some of these people who will kill several people. There was one guy who, this sounds horrible, but I'm going to tell you it anyway. And what he would do is when he killed somebody, or he killed quite a few women, and then on the walls of his cell in his little room, he had drawn their eyes. He would draw their eyes on the wall, or I guess what he remembered of them. It's like one eye. It wasn't even a pair. It wasn't even both. It was just one of each. Just bizarre looking. You might be able to Google that. I don't know, but I know that happened. But I don't know if you call that. Well, that's art. But I don't know if he's an artist or considered himself an artist. But because man, that's kind of out there. But you have John Wayne Gacy, you have Hitler, you have a couple of others. But I don't think the high-end artists would do that because I think they'd be focused on what they're doing, concerned with the art part of it. Instead of the serial killing part, number 2 and number 1. I don't think that a serial killer would tell you that they're thinking about being one, or what would you do if you weren't? I think I would do that, so I'm sure. And I bet you that person's probably kind of funny if you think about it. So that would be my thoughts on that. Anyway, thank you for that. Thank you for the video. If you have a video you want to send in, just send it to me and I will do the same thing there. All right, let's get to the next question. Hi, Scott. I very, very rarely talk with my hands like most people do. Thinking back, my dad was the same, and my mother to some extent. In fact, I admit it bugs me a little bit when people gesture all the time. They're talking. How rare is this? You mean like misophonia, how you say it correctly? When you hear somebody eat and you hear them chewing, it makes you mad. You don't like it, something like that. Well, I'm not sure. I haven't heard of a group or a personality type that doesn't like it when people gesture when they talk. You'd hate Mark Bowden. If you ever broke into Mark Bowden's house, all you'd have to do is tie up his hands. He couldn't say a word because every time he talks, he leans in and gets his illustrators going, and that's fine. He's a great communicator. He's the guy for that. So I'm not aware of that. There are no personality types as a whole or as a group that dislike seeing or watching people talk with their hands or use their hands. My wife does a lot. She uses hers a whole lot. I don't think she could talk either if she can't use her hands. So I hope that helps. But I would say it's extremely rare since you ask. All right, let's get to the next one. Hi, Scott. All narcissists have to be the center of attention or of their own world, e.g., Bundy, Dahmer, and their need for attention. How likely is someone suffering from psychopathy to totally withdraw from general society, e.g., Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber? Well, you know what? Ted Kaczynski wasn't a psychopath. He was a schizophrenic, most likely a paranoid schizophrenic from what I understand. So I read a bunch of stuff on him. I was like, wow, what's going on with this guy? If you don't remember, Ted Kaczynski was the guy that was the Unabomber that would send people bombs in the mail they didn't like, and killed a bunch of people doing that. So that's not psychopathy. Most of the time, psychopaths, they want to be out where it's happening. They want to be in a crowd, and they want to be where the people are. They want to be around people. They want to be around excitement because they don't have the ability to feel anything or emotionally. So they do get a buzz from adrenaline, and there's a lot of people around, a lot of things going on. You don't know what's going to happen next. That gives them a little bit of a buzz. So they like being around a lot of people. They like being in big cities. There's a lot of action going on. So they do love to be, the high-end narcissist loves to be the center of attention, and they'll make sure they are, because most of their sentences will start with I and to me, and no matter what you tell them, they're going to tell you their version of that happened to them. They're going to want all the attention on them. And no matter what's going on, if it's a family member, it's going to, whatever y'all are doing, if it's a parent, or one of the parents, then it's going to, orbit around them. Their suggestion should be the most important one to them because that's the way they see the world. So, Kaczynski wasn't a psychopath. And although he did a lot of things that a normal person wouldn't do, the paranoid schizophrenia diagnosis would, or I don't know if he was diagnosed with that, but that's what the thought was on him. They believe that the people that dealt with him believe that's what the situation was. And he died a few years back. So psychopaths want to stay where there's a lot of people. So no, they won't withdraw from society. Hi, Scott. I heard that if someone is guilty or if someone is not guilty, is fearful of being believed, they show the same deceptive behavior as a guilty person. How do you tell the two apart? Quite often on here, I get the same question a lot. So if you ask me a question and I don't answer it, it's because I've answered it in another video. And I get this one a lot, but I'll answer it one more time. And this may be the last time I do. But I say, if you ask me a question, I'll answer it. But from now on, if I've had it before, I won't answer it. So what happens is this: people get nervous. You're going to get nervous. I'm going to get nervous. Shoot, if the cops show up and they want to talk to me about killing somebody, yeah, I'm going to get all nervous. I'm going to get a lawyer. It's the first thing I'm going to do. And you go, why would you lawyer up? I know to ask that question. So they make you feel bad about it. Don't be afraid to, though. Not that, you may not need it, but it's good to have one there when, just in case. So yeah, what's going on there is the person's just showing signs of stress. So in an interrogation, you have to get past all that. That's why you can't do it in 30 minutes or an hour, and when someone's saying they didn't do it, you can't just say, oh, I know they did it from the beginning because here are the stress cues I'm seeing. Can't do that, because if that person is nervous, but the thing is, the interrogator will know that you're stressed. They'll know what that is. They're going to expect that. If you go into an interrogation and somebody's done something they shouldn't have, say if it's murder or something, and that person isn't nervous, man, that's awesome, because right then they should be nervous. They should be showing all kinds of signs that say, wait a minute, it's not me. I didn't do it. Hang on just a minute, no matter what happens. That's why when you go in, I can tell you this one. When you go into an interrogation, one of the first things you do, if it depending on the situation, you can do this. You can go in and say, hey, listen, we know you did this. There's no question about it whatsoever. We know you did this. They know you did this. Now the evidence points to you. And so that's what we're going to talk about. That's why I'm here, is to talk to you about that. If they don't go, hang on, man, and get all mad. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. Start fussing with you, kind of. Then you go, huh. If they go, okay, start listening to it and then start talking, that's not a good sign for somebody who's innocent, believe it or not. The person who's innocent is going to get mad, and they're going to get all ramped up and like, and get upset. You'll get them calmed down, but then it'll dawn on them when you start talking about their guilt. They're going to get fired up again, and they'll get all bent out of shape. Whereas, now, if somebody were to hear this and go, well, so if I did this and get caught, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in and act like I'm mad. You're going to show things that show that you aren't mad, that you aren't angry. And there are a couple other things you're going to do in there that I'm leaving out. So you look for a group of, a cluster of behaviors that tell you that person really is upset. They really are angry. They really are nervous. So being nervous is okay. They'll know that. It doesn't take that long to figure that out and to know that you didn't do it. But there's a protocol you must follow to make sure that person didn't do it. Because there are a lot of people out there that are good at acting like they didn't do something. And they've got all those little things like what I'm telling you figured out. So it's okay. If you didn't do it, they're going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out. Now, there are a lot of people who, for not just because of the interrogation, but for other reasons in their case, have gone to prison for doing things they shouldn't have done, or when they didn't do them. Okay, we know that. There are innocent people in prison right this minute, and for all kinds of different things. But that's 99% of that is not because of the interrogation. It's for things outside of the interrogation part of it. Because the interrogation may be, hey, man, I'm not seeing anything here, but they may go forward in the protocol they have to follow from a legal standpoint, and that's where things go sideways. But then again, you may have a horrible interrogator, somebody who's not trained, not very good, haven't been doing it that long, and they may read it wrong. But for the most part, being nervous is okay. And in fact, I would suggest it. Hello, Scott. I heard from Eckhart Tolle that if your beliefs teach you to dehumanize certain people, then you might be capable of atrocious things as they are just a concept in your mind. So could dogmatism, especially extreme, cause one to become a psychopath? No, doesn't work that way. Just because you believe a certain thing doesn't change your brain. It doesn't change the way your amygdalas work. Doesn't change the way your limbic system works. It doesn't change the way your frontal lobes and your parietal lobes and everything else in there connects properly. Doesn't affect that. So beliefs is one thing, and then actually having a neurological situation where you are what's quote unquote a psychopath, as everyday people call them. They have antisocial personality disorder. No, it doesn't work that way. So, but he's great, man. Great books. All right, here's another video, and this one is from Mila.
Hi, Scott. You've talked about duper's delight when someone is being deceptive. And then there are people who may smile if they are nervous or feeling shy for whatever reason and are being deceptive. So how easy is it for you to see the difference between these two types of smiles?
All right. That's a good question, actually. Thank you, Mila. And thanks for sending the video. So, duper's delight is a specific thing you look for in specific situations. Because somebody's sitting around smiling doesn't mean that's duper's delight. Duper's delight happens as quite often as a micro expression. Not always, but quite often it happens that way. It's just a tiny little smile when the person's asked a question and they think they're getting away with it, or they've done something they shouldn't have, and the question's about that and they think they're getting away with it, then you'll see a little smile come up on their face. Doesn't last that long a lot of times. It's really quick. It may come in and come out like that. It may happen really quickly, but that's the difference. And if somebody's just regular old smiling like that, if they find it humorous or whatever, other than getting away with it, the smile's going to last longer. So that's the difference in that, because the person that's having duper's delight, they don't want you to see that. They don't want to see that, and it leaks. That's what we call it when a micro expression happens. That's an expression that leaks out. They're trying to hold back, but it pops out really quickly. So that's the difference in those two, a real one, and then one that looks like duper's delight and duper's delight. So, and those studies are done by Paul Ekman, E-K-M-A-N, Paul Ekman. So he's one of the ones that started doing the studies, first studies on facial expression, smiles and frowns and disdain, contempt, these facial expressions, which ones are universal across, for everyone when they feel certain emotions. So get into Paul Ekman, read a couple of his books. Awesome. They're great. Hi, Scott. What does it mean if voice pitch gets higher or lower? Okay. When you ask someone a question and their voice goes up like this, that's stress. Now, why should they be stressed? If it's like we talked about a few minutes ago, where the person is in an interrogation and they didn't do it and they get nervous, their voice is going to go up because their throat will get a little bit tight, their larynx squishes up against their vocal cords, or they're against their vocal cords. Their larynx will squish up a little bit, and the air comes through a little faster because there's less space to get through, so your voice tone will go up. And that's totally normal for someone who is stressed. Now, for it to go lower, and someone's talking like this, that lets you know they're relaxing. They're thinking about something. Doesn't mean they're like, I'm relaxing. But when you tell them something and their voice goes low, it may be an emotional thing. A lot goes with the voice tone and cadence. And cadence is how fast you talk. And the volume comes into that as well. So what are we looking at here? Would it be the voice tone goes up, the volume goes up, and the cadence speeds up, how fast they talk? If that happens, something's up. That's a lot of stress going on psychologically. That some could be is bothering them. So that could be, you could look at that and say, that's one cue, that's three altogether there, that let you say, or where you can say, this might be deceptive, because that's stress, and their voice starts getting higher. Like I do when I get all worked up and get excited on here. I start talking faster. My voice tone goes up. It's done that since we started talking about this, because I get all worked up it's my favorite thing to talk about. I'll talk about this all day long, these kind of things. So you see excitement, and that's when that happens as well. And then when it gets into something, you talk about somebody hurting somebody, then my brain goes, we don't want to talk real loud about that, so my voice will go lower. Tone, volume, and then the cadence will slow down as well. That's one reason. Now, like I said, again, it could be stress could make those things go up because you hear people say, no, like that, So, but it doesn't mean they're being deceptive. It doesn't mean they're being honest. That's just one cue you look for. Or when you hear that, you grab that and quickly, there's one, there's a cue, and then you start looking for others and listening for others. So there's no specific meaning to that because it can mean a bunch of different things. But in those situations I gave you, that's when you want to start paying attention. When you ask someone a question and that voice tone goes up because their throat is constricted a little bit, squishes their larynx, air comes out quicker, voice tone goes higher, they may start talking faster, may get a little bit louder. So those are things you want to look for, but there is no specific meaning to that. It just depends on the situation. It's a good question. Hey, Scott, is saying then the same as saying and then? And what would a truth teller be saying instead of these? It depends on what the situation is. So those aren't necessarily cues to look for and listen for. However, you can say, if somebody were to say, I went to the store, then we went to McDonald's after that and came home. I'd say, what happened in the then? You were at McDonald's, or whether you're at the store and getting ready to go to McDonald's, or you go, what happened between McDonald's and the store, or the store and McDonald's? What happened there? What went on? So that could be a thing where you're bridging time, you're creating time there. So you say, we just went to and you're totally blowing past some other stuff you did. You didn't say, oh yeah, I shot this guy in the parking lot. Left that out. So it just depends on what's happening there, So it doesn't necessarily mean the person is lying or telling the truth. Again, a lot of that today, for some reason, light on the psychopaths and psychopathy. So it doesn't necessarily mean I don't believe there's a difference between then and then. And then we went, then we went. In my experience, there's no big difference in there. And I'm not aware of any studies that would show a difference in those two. And I think I'd be aware of it because I read those things all the time. So I don't think there's a big difference there. So there you have that. I hope that helps. It's a good question, actually. Hey, Scott, if someone chaffs, is it better to let them finish or interrupt and go back to the question? All right. Now, this is something that Greg Hartley coined, chaff and redirect. And chaff, chaff is one of those, like a bomber is flying, and they're trying to zero in on it with these heat-seeking missiles. So what it does is it throws a bunch of sheets of metal and these aluminum things out the back. So the missiles will zero in on those because they're metal, maybe they're heated up sometimes, and you have all those things flying around. So the missiles pay attention to everything but the plane. And that's the redirect part of it, because you have all the chaff that comes out, which in this case would be words. Someone just starts talking a lot about something different. That's the chaff part. At the same time, they redirect because they brought up all this other subject to talk about. So if you understand that, if I made that clear, then when they chaff, let them talk for a minute. Let them go on talking, because they may give you information you can use later on. They may say something they shouldn't have said, but you need to remember all those things they're talking about when they start giving out all this information to throw you off the trail of what they said, because they've got the subject happening over here, the main thing, and you ask them a question, and then they go, well, look over here. Look at all this stuff over here, because what I'm talking about, I remember one time we went, that's the chaff and redirect. So it's important to know when that happens, there's going to be information there you might be able to use later on in your interrogation, if you're an officer or a detective or something asks me about that. So that would be my suggestion. Remember what they said. Then we get finished. You can say, wait, that's not what I'm talking about. I didn't ask you that at all. Or you can say, no, because when you do that, that shows you're being aggressive and you're starting to get up their hind end about it. So you may want to say, no, that's not what I mean. You may act confused, oh, wait a minute, no, that's not what I mean. So you may want to act like that so they don't feel like you're being aggressive toward them. And you say, what I'm asking is this. Or you can say, dude, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not at all what I'm talking about. You're trying to get me off the trail here. Let's talk about this. So there's that tact as well that you may want to take. So it just depends on what's happening. It's a great question. Who is more violent on a daily basis, psychopaths or sociopaths? On a daily basis, it's going to be what people know as sociopaths, because those people were most likely raised in a violent home, where somebody's beating them up all the time, or they saw somebody getting beat up all the time or hurt, being hollered at all the time, really violent little world they grew up in. Whereas a psychopath, they may have had some in their life, but they don't resort to that right out of the gate because they don't want anybody. They're usually in hiding, in other words, because they know they're different than everybody else. So, and there's things they want to do that they can't do, like hurt people or little animals and things like that. So they hide that. So the person out of those two, the one that goes to prison and not just jail earlier are the quote unquote sociopaths. Those go to prison and jail earlier because they're more violent on a day, or more often. I don't know if it's day to day. I don't know if I would say, but between the two, if that's the question, who's more violent day to day, it's going to be the sociopath. Because the psychopath, they're going to usually, quite often, they'll plan what they're going to do. They'll be really patient because what they don't want to do is go to prison because they can't do anything in there. They can, but they can't do as much as they could when they're out. And the sociopath comes from an emotional standpoint where they don't care what's happened. They're going to hurt that person, or do whatever it is that's mean or bad from an emotional standpoint. So, and the other comes from the point they want to do it because it's bad. It gives them a buzz, and they don't want to get caught, which would be the psychopath. So I hope that helps. Hi, Scott. Is it ever possible that chronic drug abuse can lead to the development of personality / mental disorders? Yeah, because you can destroy parts of your brain doing that. Huffing paint, that eats up your brain cells. Used to, everybody thought your brain couldn't regenerate brain cells, but we know you can now, and that they do. But still, it can. Yeah, you can. That can harm you. Now, there's some people when they smoke a whole lot of weed, man, they smoke so much, or they take gummies that are like really high in THC, and they never come back. They're never the same again. Or ayahuasca, something like that. They may go off the deep end and not come back to normal. I knew a guy that did that, and to this day he's not normal. Not the same guy at all. It's really close to being a different person. So yeah, it can do things to you that last, not necessarily because you pop something up here, but because maybe it's rewiring something up there to make that happen. But yeah, especially if if you have a history of schizophrenia in your family, if you smoke a lot of pot, then a lot of weed, then and you get a lot of it in you, that can sort of steer you that way a little bit, from my understanding of it. And then people who take those enormous amounts of THC through gummies, that can do it. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't do anything at all. It just freaks them out for a while, and then you come back to normal. But there are situations where you just don't come back, man. So yeah, you got to be careful with that. So yeah, that can happen. Great question. I'm interested in mentalism. Are there any ways to read if a mentalist is faking or not? I read a lot about the theories behind mentalism. You can't be hypnotized without consent thing, distraction, mind manipulation, blah, blah, blah. I know how the trick is most probably done, but is there a way to verify this trick is actually real or not? And are there behavioral clues when we can point that we can point to or look out for? All right. Now, in my experience, when I see somebody being a mentalist or doing something like that on like TikTok or on YouTube or something, or I go somewhere and see somebody doing that, my first call is Spidey. I call him, I go, hey man, here's what happened, or I'll send him the video and go, what do you think about this? He's like, no, dude, this is so simple, it's ridiculous. And then I don't want him to tell me how he did it. I don't want to know. Don't want to know how people do magic tricks. I don't want that. I just want to know if it's real or not. He's like, no, it's not real. I do that in my show. So most of that stuff, from my understanding, my experience, no. It's how can somebody read your mind? Now, there's that thing where you go, my mom, I was thinking about my mom and she called, maybe there's some connection between a mother and a child. Or my wife, you're tight with your wife and you think about her and she called. There's a guy named Mac Wiseman who was a bluegrass singer. He was one of my best friends, and he passed away a few years ago. And he used to tell me, he said, man, I can almost will somebody to call me. And he said, you get a feeling and you decide you're going to call somebody. I said, yeah. And he said, I think I can almost will people to do that. He says, I've been able to do it for years. And I said, Mac, you're normal. You're a normal guy. I've known you for damn 30 years, or longer, since I was a little kid. And I want you to know that I don't think people can do that. And he said, well, and he never said, oh, yeah, I can. Didn't fight back or anything. He said, well, yeah, I know. It's just kind of weird. I thought about that. Cut to 2 years later. And I'm sitting in my house, and I remember where I was. I had a studio in the house at the time. And I was sitting there, and I said, you know what? I'm going to call Mac. I called him up, and he said, we're on speakerphone. I said, okay. And I heard these people, I heard somebody say, holy shit. And what happened was, he said he's going to make me call him. That's the truth. That's what apparently he told these people. There's 3 people there, and I know those 3 people. And that's what they said happened. I don't think they would get in cahoots and just tell me that to mess with me. So I believed them. There was a person there I didn't know. 2 of the 3 I knew, and the 3rd person I didn't know. And they swore that had come up in conversation. He said, I can almost will somebody to call me. And they knew that he knew me because we're all friends. They said, all right, have Rouse call you. He said, okay. So, and they started talking. And he didn't start focusing on it or anything or saying my name or anything. But a few minutes later, apparently, that's when I called. So, but when it comes to mentalism, people going, I'll give you $100 if I can't check, if I don't know the name of your dog when you're little. Spidey told me there's ways to do that. He does that. Wait till he does it to you, freak you out. Look him up. Look him up online. He'll freak you out, man. And he'll tell you, no. There's a way to do this. There's a way you go about doing it. So I believe him, So I don't think there's anything to mentalism that you couldn't do too if you didn't study it. If you studied it and learned it, you could do it too, I think. So just from talking to Spidey, he talked me down off that because I was like, dude, what about this? And he's like, no, I can do what I hear. And I've seen him do it. He's done it to me. He's done it to me on, what was it? It was at a wedding. It was at Chase's wedding. And he did 2 or 3 things to me that way. And he guessed what they were. And sometimes, I should tell this, I'm going to. Every time I talk to him on Zoom, I make him show me a trick. So he's done a couple things on here when we Zoom. And I make him do 1 or 2 for me. And he's done stuff like that and guessed whatever I was thinking. He really did. I felt like he really did, but he said there's a way to go about doing it. So now I don't want to know. I don't want him to tell me because I go, dude, how do you do that? And I think he might tell me, but I don't want to know. He doesn't. All right. Hi, Scott. I've just been watching a riveting 20-minute documentary called Last Known Survivor of the South Tower on 9/11. Believe it or not, barely 1 minute in, I couldn't take my eyes off this guy's left shoulder. It went up and down like a fiddler's bow. I don't want to even imagine he might be making this up. Oh, would love to hear what you think. I've seen that. I've seen exactly what you're talking about. And I saw a couple of cues, but what we're seeing there is this guy went through a lot, and you're looking at symptoms of, in my opinion, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because people start doing weird stuff after something traumatic has happened to them. Even 20 years later, like with that guy, and I believe it was 20 years later when they were asking him those questions. But I've seen that. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I saw that shoulder thing too. I was doing a lot, but it became part of his baseline. It wasn't just for a specific question or just when they asked questions about that. He would just do it out of nowhere. So no, I believe that guy. I believe he's telling the truth. And believe me, when I see things like that, I want to know too. I want to know if that person really did that or not. Because it's important. Because you go, oh, here's a great example of someone that I don't think did something. But that always comes out later on. They usually find out. There are people that go against and say, dude, I was there too, didn't see you there, that kind of thing. I haven't looked him up and searched for that. But by looking at him, I know what the PTSD looks like. So that's my opinion of it. I think he's telling the truth on that. That's a great question, though. Good find. Hi, Scott. Is it a sign of deception for all contractions, like I am not I am not, or I did not, as opposed to I'm and didn't? Or is it just for modal verbs? Okay, I see what you're saying. When somebody contracts and they say, I'm not doing that, if they said, I am not doing that, that's, again, one of those situations. This whole episode's about apparently things like this. So it depends on what's happening, what the situation is. Now, if someone's done something they shouldn't have done, and they're waiting in the interrogation room, and they know you're going to say, hey, man, did you do this? You may see them go, and I've seen it myself, them go, no, I did not. Nope. No, I did not. And you'll hear them say, no, I did not. You hear them whisper it. You can see their mouth moving, because they're rehearsing their answers. So sometimes when the person wants to make dang sure they didn't do it, they go, no, I did not. I wouldn't do that for the world. I did not do that. That's when they're being a little bit overboard and making sure that you understand they did not. There's no question about what they said. However, if they say, no, I did not, that's different than saying, no, I did not, and illustrating with a head, So it depends on the vigor and verve that they come at you with when they're doing it. And if they say, no, I didn't, that's fine too. If they said, no, I did not, that's fine too. But it's conversationally, that's when I look for it. That's when it jumps out to me, not when somebody's all upset. Because I understand what it's like to want somebody to understand what's going to happen to them. Because I've said, you are not leaving here. There's no question about that. You are not leaving. So you could say, that makes sense. I'm not lying to that person. They're not. But right then I didn't say they are not. That would have been weird. So it depends on the situation. If it's calm and they start, and they're not contracting, that sticks out to me. But it doesn't mean for sure they're being honest or being deceptive with you. So that's a great question, though. Hello, Scott. I wonder if any psychopath has used the excuse that their amygdala is faulty to try to get away with their crimes. That'd be good. I don't know. I've never heard of that before. But it's saying I'm a psychopath, so it's okay. I did it. I don't think you use that. I don't think that'd work. Even though if they were proven psychopaths, you did it. Too bad we can't cut you loose, man. That's just too bad. So I don't, because they can still reason. They do know the difference in right and wrong. Just because your amygdala is missing, messed up, damaged, or not functioning properly, doesn't mean you don't know the difference in right and wrong. And that's what'll get you. So if they did say that, if their lawyer said that, I'd say, here's what you ought to say. They need a new lawyer, because it's not having that problem with your brain. It's being able to tell the difference in right and wrong. That's what it is. I've had that discussion before, as you can tell. So that's a good question, though. Dear Scott, what do you think about the growing trend of people saying they are narcissists and then doing a podcast and talking about narcissism? I'm kind of skeptical. I am too. I am too. Why would they say that? Unless it comes up in a conversation and everybody says, that guy's a narcissist. And they go, I'm a narcissist. Because they're trying to make it seem like it's not that big a deal since they say it. But the person coming on saying, hey, you should watch my channel because I'm a narcissist. It makes sense when you think about it. On one hand, it makes sense. On the other hand, it doesn't. Because on one hand, they're going to want the attention. They want everybody to look at them, talk about them, that kind of thing. But why would they want somebody to look at them and talk about them if it's something that's narcissism, that's bad, that people look down on? That's why I would question that, because a narcissist on this hand over here would say, yeah, I'm a narcissist, but I don't want anybody to know it. So they wouldn't say anything. And quite often it's tough for them to come to terms with that they are. So I wouldn't, those kind of things, when they say, I'm a diagnosed psychopath and this and that, and I'm going to talk about whatever. They may be. I don't know. I don't know that person. And maybe something else is up where they feel like they need to do that. But I don't listen to those. I don't want to hear somebody that can't prove they are, can't show me the fMRI. It says, yeah, here's what I am. Here's what I did. Here's what my brain looks like. They don't have that. I'm really not interested. If they have that and say, here's what it is, and I can look at it and have a professional look at it and go, geez, yeah, that's what this is, man, for sure. Then I want to hear them. Yeah, man, I'll stay all day long. But when it comes to narcissists, no. It is someone who wants some attention. obviously. And that's one way of getting it. Narcissists want attention. They want to be the center of attention, but they want to be the center of attention for something good, you know. So think about it that way. I don't trust them either. I'm skeptical about all that as well. So no, I'm not buying it. All right. If you have any questions about body language, just email them to me and I'll answer them. Bodylanguagequestions@gmail.com.